Welcome to the Golden Grail, the rise of the Magdalene witches, summer solstice, soul gathering. Our chalice for the voice of the Magdalenes to be shared. Because we made a pact to return, and with the wisdom teachings intact, now we share them. And I'm your creator and host, Eimear Stassin, and I hope you enjoy each and every one of these unique, soulful conversations. Now let's dive in. I am so delighted to welcome today's soulful speaker, Elizabeth Bercovici. Hello, Elizabeth.
Oh my God, hi. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
My dear soul sister and sister summit creator as well, because you have just completed your epic, or in the process of completing your epic online event, which we're going to dive into today. And if people have watched that, and our talk in particular, we're in the process of passing the torches, aren't we?
Yes,
Between each other.
Between each other. It's actually funny. So this is the last day of my summit, Eden Avalon, the Holy Grail. And so I felt like, of course, I had to do this interview with you today when I'm still very much in that energy. So I really just feel like there is such a beautiful, it's almost like one of those Celtic knots. It's like there is this beautiful, I just feel like, connection between the two of our summits. And, while I feel like, you're focusing, I feel like more on the energy of Mary Magdalene and, Tara, the new earth, I've really been focusing on Eden, which is, I feel like, it's an ancient consciousness, an ancient place that is calling us back now.
Yes, because after we spoke and during my interview for your summit, I was thinking like this, it's the very same things. We're just using different language and different connections to different landscapes, but we're exploring the very same ancient aspects of what's been called forth now. And I love that what we're exploring today is Eden and the quest for the Holy Grail.
Yes. Oh my God. I don't even know where to get started.
I
know. There's like so much. So, I mean, I let me just start by saying that most people, when they think of the Grail, I think a lot of people think of Indiana Jones. It's like Indiana Jones, the Last Crusade. And, it's this epic, it's the ultimate quest. It is the ultimate quest, the ultimate mystery. And I think anyone who is a seeker, who has wondered, is there more to this crazy thing called life? The Grail, like the Grail is that thing that calls to us. And that's the whole thing, is when the Grail calls to you, I actually see the Grail two ways. One, it is a consciousness tool that really is like bringing you into a greater like spiritual awakening. But I feel like it's also a force that initiates your destiny. So the Grail, on the one hand, it is about like the initiation of personal destiny, but also as a consciousness tool, as a vehicle for spiritual awakening, it brings you into the sense of oneness, allness with all of life, with all of creation. And that's why actually the Grail really brings us back to Eden, because Eden is this place beyond separation. Eden is truth. And so really the Grail and Eden work hand in hand to bring us back into full soul alignment within ourselves and also in this world together.
Wow. The Grail brings us back to Eden.
Yes, absolutely.
It's so beautiful. And as a consciousness tool, as a force to initiate your destiny, were your words. That is so powerful. And it then makes me wonder, where is this Grail that we're on this quest for?
Oh my God. So yes, I feel like there are so many different legends, so many different stories. Where to begin? Well, I feel like there are two different versions of the Grail that as the legends, as time went on, they became one and the same. So there's the original story of the fairy Grail, which is more from Celtic mythology, Celtic lore. And so you may be familiar with this, like these are the stories of like the Grail maidens. And so the Grail maidens, it's like they guard, it's like that beautiful veil between this world and the other worlds. And there is I always feel sad telling this aspect of the story, but I'm sure many of you have heard of like the rape of the Grail maidens.
Yeah.
And so this really this is called, I call this like the breaking of the fairy accord. And so when we think of these Grail maidens, on the one hand, like most people would think of them as like human guardians of the Grail. But the way that I see it is that these really were like interdimensional, like fairy divine beings. And so, of course, they would be the ones that would guard the Holy Grail. Because that's the thing is, so the Grail really, even though it's a physical object, I see this as, I almost think of it as, like, as a fairy object. It's like one of the hallows. It is not of this, it is of this world and yet not of this world. So it is holding all of the essence of the other world, all of the essence of spirit is contained within. So of course there would be these like, fairy Grail maidens who would be the ones to keep it safe. And so what ends up happening in the legends and the stories is, they are set upon by knights who do not have noble intentions. And what ends up happening, like, they rape the Grail maidens, they take the food, the water. And this is actually, I don't like to use the word sin, but this really is the word that's coming through, because to me, this is like the true sin, not like the original sin. But if you look back into like all of the earliest cultures, there is something very sacred. There are hospitality laws. And you see this even with Abraham. This like goes all the way back, because Abraham, like he, invites, strangers to dinner who turn out to be three angels. And that's the whole thing, is you'll see this in, Irish hospitality, all different cultures,
Yes.
that when someone comes to you, you offer them food and drink and shelter, sometimes before you even ask their name, and, I feel like that really is that noble spirit of giving. And to harm someone who has given you safe passage, who has brought you food and drink, that is the true sin. Because it's that kind of thing. Oh, I think you're going to say something. I don't want to cut you off.
No, not at all. I'm just nodding and saying
You're
yes.
nodding? Oh, okay. But yes,
yeah.
no, because that's the whole thing is, to give. I think that in our culture, one thing that I always love, being on like any event with Eimear, is that like I feel like we get to go back into a very ancient Celtic consciousness together. And so in today's world, we wouldn't really think much of hospitality laws. We'd be like, okay, this person's coming over at like 6 o'clock. I got to get stuff ready for them. But like in this ancient world, where like, just imagine that, you could travel on the road for miles and miles in the pouring rain with no food, like, and all of a sudden in the distance, you would see, a small little cabin, like, and there would be a family there. And without question, you would be seen, held, provided for. And really, that was, I feel like, the law of goodwill toward men. That was the law of, I don't even want to just say toward men, goodwill toward all fellow beings. And I really feel like that is part of when we were created, that was part of the divine intention. It was, we were seeded from a place of deep, holy love. With the intention that we would go forth into the world, sharing that love with each other. And so when this happens, going back to the rape of the Grail maidens, this is a cosmic level sin. This is beyond. And this is actually a moment in the history where the land, at that moment, it's like the veil between the worlds is permanently severed. So there is, even here, there's a little bit of the expulsion from paradise, because you have these heavenly Grail maidens, like they're like the Grail wells, and like they're pouring the water, and it's just this heavenly scene of abundance and fertility and beauty. And then when this happens, it's like the door is closed. The door is closed. And what ends up happening, all around, so this is, I call this like Logres. So this is Arthur's ancient kingdom. The story happens a little bit before the time of King Arthur. The land is totally transformed, where before it was lush and abundant and fertile, all of a sudden it turns into a wasteland. It is barren and gray, and nothing grows. And so this is a really iconic part of the story. And it's interesting because this is a very ancient understanding. It's in both ancient Welsh and Irish mythology. When the king is strong, when the king is healthy, the land prospers. When the king is weak, when the king is also only interested in his own self-interest, the land suffers. The land dies and decays. And so there is this force that I think even goes back to, like, if you look at, ancient Egypt, there's those divine birthrights of our royals. And I feel called to bring this in because I know Eimear Summit is, the golden grail, and really drawing attention to this energy of gold. Gold is the color of, it's like divine kingship. And when we say that, or divine queenship. And, I think when we say that really is because in those cultures, the rulers, the kings, the queens, they really were supposed to be the embodiments of the divine in form. That was, and that's the whole thing. So going back to, this kind of Grail literature and like the Grail myths, the land is weak, the land is suffering. And so, no one knows, like, what's happened, what's to be done about this. And eventually the story goes that Arthur's knights come upon these men, who have actually raped the Grail maidens and committed this great atrocity. And the knights, like, they surround them. There's one man in particular that reveals what has happened. And that's when the knights take it upon themselves to begin the quest for the Holy Grail. And so we talk about, the Grail as a vehicle of destiny. It's because they were destined. Like, even the man who confessed to what had happened and told the knights of this great sin, like, he was also a vehicle because in that moment he gave the knights, it was a chance for restoration. It was a chance for really, I feel like, the resurrection. I'm using this word because this is, I know a summit really honoring Mary Magdalene. And I feel like you can't really bring in Mary Magdalene without also feeling the overlighting presence of Christ. So this is a moment for true redemption, and the knights go on this holy quest, and that is their destiny. Their destiny is to go forth and restore that which has been lost. And I really feel like that's the destiny for everyone listening. Everyone is doing that in some way, shape, or form themselves. Whether you are a teacher, whether you're a doctor, it doesn't matter. You are bringing harmony and sowing goodwill into the world. And that is the noblest purpose. That is the true energy, the essence of Arthur and the knights.
Wow. Oh, that is so beautiful with the Grail maidens and the knights coming in. And I really feel that protector energy, the divine knights and their purpose on their destiny, this quest for the Holy Grail.
Yes, absolutely. And so the story continues because you think it would be like, okay, we're going after the Grail. But as you know, I mean, that's why there's so many myths and legends, because the knights don't really know what it means. Because on the one hand, if it was just a regular quest, like there's like a lost maiden, or like, it's like they would be able to find it, no problem. But because it is a holy and mystical object, it requires a certain level of spiritual initiation to be able to discover it, to find it. And so they're all different stories of the knights being tested in different ways. But the story that I think is of the most significance is the story of Percival and the Fisher King. And many people have heard the story before. I'm going to give you the highlights because I think it's really important for our purposes here today. And so Percival, it's funny. So he is, he's a young knight and he gets started on his journey. And it's funny because this is like the one thing about Percival is that he was raised by his mother to have very good manners. I think that's a noble thing. It's a noble thing. Yes, and so important. Yes. And so he's taught, don't ask embarrassing questions. Like, don't ask anything that might be considered rude. And so, lo and behold, one day Percival happens upon this mysterious place called the Grail Castle. He, of course, doesn't know that that's what it's called. But the Grail Castle is really interesting because Oh, I should say one of the reasons why the knights, kind of weren't always able to find the Grail castle moves around. It doesn't stay in one place. So that's the whole thing is you could be like, but the Grail castle was here yesterday. And then tomorrow, the next day it's gone. And it really is because the Grail castle, it is, it's a fairy castle, like it is that connection between worlds. And so when I say fairy, I also mean it's like I feel like we're talking about, the ancient beings, even like the Tuatha Dé Danann from Ireland. It is like they are these great beings who have in many ways been in connection with humanity from our first days here. It's just that often we've pushed them away. But like especially in Arthur's time, they really were much closer. They were a lot closer to us. And so the Grail Castle is one such place. And you'll hear in the stories, I'm not kidding, you will hear stories of people who it's like, I went for a walk in the woods and then they're gone for 7 years and they come back and for them it's been a day. They're like, oh, I had the most beautiful day. I went to this mysterious place and there was the most incredible music playing and the most incredible food and it was like otherworldly. And yes, it was otherworldly because they were in the other world. And so that's kind of what's happening here with the Grail Castle. And so there are other stories that sometimes, like even if a knight found the Grail Castle, that it might be empty and there would be no occupants inside. So to find the Grail Castle with people actually inside is a big deal. And so Percival finds this Grail Castle almost purely by accident. And when he gets inside, he sees he gets inside and this is beautiful castle. It's very richly decorated, but it's also, very weathered. And outside, of course, is the wasteland. And so in the main hall, he sees, resting on a throne, this very, very sad and aged king. And the king, there is a great gaping wound in his leg. And he doesn't really know what's happened, but he goes to the king. And again, because his mother taught him not to ask impertinent questions, to always have good manners, he doesn't ask about the wound in the king's leg. It's revealed that this man is called the Fisher King. And he's called the Fisher King, I'm just going to say, because, the Fisher King can shapeshift. So sometimes he is a king and other times he could be a fisherman or he could be, any number of things. And again, that's how we know we're in the land of fairy, in the other worlds. But so he is the Fisher King. And the second, he gets there before the king, all of a sudden there's a great procession that starts. And these I would say servants of the king, they start walking. It's like they're in this great hall and they start walking. They're 3 servants with glorious pillows on their head. And upon each of these pillows, there is a sacred and holy object. And on one of them rests the Holy Grail. In some legends, this Grail is it's like a horn, but it's the same thing. It is this holy, holy object. And this is the reason that the knight has come, though he doesn't know it at the time. So this is the problem. He doesn't know that that's why. So while the other knights are all seeking the Grail, Percival doesn't know that, and that's probably why he gains admittance to the castle, because he's not intentionally seeking the Grail. And so when he gets there, he sees this, he is immediately taken by that beautiful Grail and wonders what it does, what it is. And he has this part of him that desperately wants to ask the meaning of everything. Why is there this king that is wounded on his throne? Why is there this great procession? And also, furthermore, there are these kind of, fairy-like servants in the castle, and all of them just seem so sad and full of despair. But Percival just stands there and says nothing. And so this first time that there are different legends that, Percival actually returns to the Grail Castle, but this first time he is in the Grail Castle, he fails. And he fails because he does not ask the one thing that would have healed the king's wound and actually would have restored the outside, the wasteland, to its true beauty and true form. The question, all he had to do was ask why. What is the meaning of all this? And this is what's so important, because so often in our earth walk, we go through life and like, many of us, like if we have like a 9-to-5 job, or there's that kind of like daily monotony, we stop asking questions. We stop asking, what am I doing here? Like, what is the point, of my time here on this earth, and once we stop asking those questions, a part of us dies. And so really we're seeing that, these kind of self inquiries, and not just inquiries into self, but inquiries into the nature of reality, of creation, of the cosmos, of the mysteries of, spirituality through the ages. These are the questions which they feed us, they feed the soul. And so here in this moment, Percival fails. He does not ask this question, and he is forced to leave the Grail Castle. There are stories where he, eventually gets another shot and he does get the Grail. But I think it's interesting because, in this first moment, he's still stuck, like he's been conditioned. And I think this is really important. There's that domestication that, like, his mother, I'm sure, who was coming from a very good place, was like, don't be impertinent, don't, and so he follows that, that kind of law of chivalry over really, I think, what is his destiny, which is to be the one that actually saves the kingdom of the Fisher King. And in so doing, the world itself, and so that's the whole thing is, I've been rambling a bit. I have more to say. Okay, so I'll keep going.
No, it's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. But so anyway, so I want to draw your attention to this description of the wasteland. And so many of you, if you might have like heard of, there's a famous poem by T.S. Eliot called The Wasteland. It literally is inspired by the Arthurian like lore and mythos. And so I want to also say, it's like, of course, because this would happen as I'm like preparing to do this interview. So I think today is like June 7th that we're recording this. And so yesterday I'm like getting ready for this interview, and I do this thing where I like leave like all of the windows wide open. I'm like, bring in the fresh air. It is glorious. And later that day, I found out there was like this major pollution, like health warning where I am. I live right outside of New York City in New Jersey. And so apparently there are these terrible fires in Canada, these terrible forest fires in Canada. And the flame and the pollution has literally been coming down. And I don't know, like people, if you aren't from like, the continent in North America, you might not know the geography that well, but I am very, very far from Canada. I am very far.
Way up there.
Yeah, it's way up there. And so no, but and I noticed it because I went outside because I go on walks, and I thought that I swear to God, I thought that someone must have been having like a campfire, because you go outside and you can feel it. You can feel it in the air in your lungs. And there are actually these crazy advisory warnings. Do not go outside. Do not leave your house. If you do, you need to wear a mask. And of course, I didn't know this yesterday. I found out way later. I was like, oh my God. And then I was like, it's okay. I was like, all the energy work and magic I do, I'm fine. But it was weird because I was like, oh my God, here I am going to be talking about the Grail, the wasteland, Eden, mostly focusing right now on the wasteland. And literally outside, there is this, like, that is our present moment. That's the whole thing. Is at first, like, these stories just seem like this is an ancient legend from like 1500, almost 2000 years ago. But actually, no, like that's the thing, is these stories have modern day relevance. They are timeless because they echo in our modern world. And so right outside my house is a wasteland. And I woke up this morning, super early enough to see the sunrise. And it was like a red sun. And I know that, I think this is like a line from like Lord of the Rings. Like, I think one of the characters like sees like a red sun. He's like, a red sun rises, much blood has been spilled this night. Mm-hmm. And so obviously like that's more Lord of the Rings, but no, but it was the same thing where I was like, oh my God, that's what this is. And it was like a mystical understanding, but I was just like, oh my God. And I had to feel the full weight, of what had happened, and recognizing that, like, even though that, especially for me, that's happened, hundreds of miles from me, probably thousands of miles from me. But I can literally, all I have to do is open my door and I'm breathing in those fumes now, because that's the wasteland. And, so I feel like this is a good moment to kind of like pivot to like, to, I feel like where like I really want this, conversation to lead, which is Eden. Like this is, and hold on, I always feel like I'm talking too much. Do you have
it's just so beautiful. I'm just drinking it all in with the initiation that you're taking us through, as the Grail is as well. And
Yes.
from the fires and the destruction and the red sun and the wasteland, and now where you're going to Eden.
Yes.
Well, it's really, yeah, really beautiful. So please continue.
Yeah, no, thank you. I always have to stop because I'm like, I would just go on. So it's like, but no, but so it was interesting. So I really was called to do this event, Eden Avalon, the Holy Grail. This is a summit that just happened by the time you're watching this interview. And I got the tap on the shoulder. It was like December 2022, because I was teaching a class at that time called Arthurian Myth and Magic. And the last class was on the Holy Grail. And so I'm getting ready to teach on the Holy Grail. I'm like, yes, it's going to be so exciting. And that whole week beforehand, I just kept like, I'm not kidding. Like I was waking up like I was in Eden. I was like, what's happening? And it's unmistakable. Because one of those things that like, when you feel the Garden of Eden, you feel the Garden of Eden. You can't mistake it. That's what it is. And I was just like, oh my God. And, I'm someone who I was actually not really raised in any kind of organized religion. So when I felt that coming in, I was like, this is the real thing. There is no lens. There's no projection. This is it. And, so I was really, just, I'm very much like, I always honor spirit and I honor what comes through. And so I asked humbly, I was just like, okay, what does Eden have to do with the Holy Grail? And it was so interesting because literally, that's, I don't even know how to say, like, there are so many stories that link them. And there are a bunch of different stories, but one of the ones that's like, coming to mind right now, this is kind of like on the inner planes. It is said that the wood from the tree of knowledge is actually like, there's a ship that the Holy Grail, is in the inner planes, is traveling throughout time and space. And this Grail is waiting on a bed that is literally created from the trees, from the tree of knowledge, from the branches of the tree of knowledge. So this is very mythical here, but really these two stories go hand in hand, because that's the whole thing is, what is the wasteland? The wasteland, when you see like the crimes that, were committed against the Grail Maidens, it's very indicative, it's evocative of, that original sin, where basically there's that expulsion from paradise, because the Grail Maidens, once that happened to them, we were cast out, of the world of fairy and magic. That was the end. And so really Arthur's quest with the knights, it's this last call for, it's this last, ditch effort to hold on to the magic of the old worlds, to not let the worlds be separated from each other, which is very similar to Eden. It's like Eden and that once world, because Adam and Eve, they didn't want to leave paradise. They didn't want to leave paradise. And really, so when I think of Eden, I also, in a very, very primal sense. So I was putting this Grail summit together very much like at the exact same time as Eimear. We were just like, I feel like in like energetic, concert, just like putting these two sacred events together for you. And it's funny because I was thinking I had to get speakers. I had to have someone talk about Eve and someone talk about Lilith. And I realized that I had forgotten like the principal, almost the most important figure in the garden, which was God. It's like, I forgot, like that it's like whether you want to see God as male, female, like, whether God has no gender, it is the force of creation, that which created worlds. And somehow I had forgotten about that. And that's the point, is like, that really is the true story of the Garden of Eden, is that moment where we became separated from the one. And so when we are looking at Eden, it's a place of paradise, yes, but it's that paradise because the divine, like when you think of like a lot of the programs that are running on our planet right now, lack, scarcity, all of those are complete illusions, because the divine is infinite in what it can create. It creates how many different realities? It creates flowers and bushes and streams in abundance. So it's like one of those things that we have forgotten, that divine truth of like all that we are. And so when we, reconnect with the garden, we remember the holy sacred truth of all that we are. And the Grail, really what it is, because I believe I said earlier, it's a real, I believe it's a real 3D object. It also exists on the inner planes where we can do great magic with it. But I believe historically, I believe historically that it was a real object. But I feel that it is, it was like a fairy object, something that really was, linking the worlds together, like the sword Excalibur, like the four hallows of the Tuatha Dé Danann. These were objects that literally acted as the bridge between worlds. And so the whole thing with the Holy Grail, when you drink from it, when you meditate on it, really what it is it brings you back to the source of all that is true, the source of creation, the source of what you are. So that is, to drink from the Grail is to drink from ultimate truth. And that ultimate truth is divinity, and divinity in its myriad forms of possibility. So anyway, so you're seeing now that that's part of why the Grail leads us back to Eden, because it's leading us back to the truth. And so when we look outside and we see the wasteland, and that's the 3D reality, and we're not sure what to do, how do we get back to Eden? Well, what I'm here to tell you today is that Eden is calling. Eden is here. And that's the whole thing. Is when I was teaching this class, I said it was like December 2022, and all this energy of Eden started to come through. I, was teaching like the last class. Usually my classes would be kind of long because I could be chatty. And I basically got cut off. And I was like, wait, this is it? It was a very short class compared to everything else. And I heard, not yet. Like basically, not yet, there's more. And so I knew that this Eden energy it was basically like it was ripening. It was waiting for the perfect time that it could be presence, that it could really be able to come through at a moment where humanity would be able to receive it. And so I really feel the fact, honestly, like Eden, I can truly say that it has returned, it is here. But what I also really want to highlight is the significance. Don't want to toot my own horn or like Eimear's horn. But the thing though, is that I think is so beautiful is we actually created these two summits, both focusing on the Holy Grail without talking to each other first. And so I just reached out. I was like, hey, do you want to be a speaker on my summit? And Eimear wrote back, it's like, wait, what? I'm doing, and it was this beautiful, we had this like really beautiful moment of just like divine laughter and, and joy, because, oh my God, the Holy Grail, I really feel that the Grail is, is a consciousness. It is a consciousness. It is wanting right now for us to interact with it, to once more, bask in the mysteries that the Grail contains. And so there is no accident that the two of us, within like a week of each other, that we are both doing summits on the Holy Grail, because this is the time of sacred remembrance. This is the time. The Grail is not something that is relegated to yesteryear. The Grail is eternal. The Grail is here. And really what I've also been like really coming into understanding is that these stories of like the Grail maidens, even though we think of the Grail really from the time of King Arthur, and there's that also connection with the blood of Christ, that actually this kind of sacred object of the Grail really existed, for millennia before that. This very sacred, holy object. And I really feel like it's this object that connects us with the source of our being, with divine truth. safeguarded through the ages, and held by, different Grail kings, different beings that would safeguard this holiest of holies, this holy sacred object. And so here today, there's no coincidence, because the Grail has passed out of legends. Sometimes like it passes out of time, but then it always comes back. And it has come back now in this moment, because there is the reclamation of Eden. And, for Eimear, I know that she's really talking about Tara and the new earth. And that's the whole thing, is the Grail is lighting the way, leading the way. And it's leading the way to paradise. It's leading the way. And something that I wanted to share with this audience from my summit, there was a woman there who was actually channeling Sarah, the daughter of Mary Magdalene and Yeshua, Jesus Christ. And it was just a short channeling at the end of the interview, but this I really feel I'm supposed to share. And Sarah was saying that actually Eden is a realm in Mother Earth. It is one of Mother Earth's, like it is her highest realm. It's like an etheric realm. Is actually the greatest gift that she has to give us. But you cannot give a gift to someone before they are ready to receive it. So that's the thing. So all this time we've been searching for Eden, we've been searching for paradise. But as a consciousness, as a species, we were not yet ready to receive of the fruit. We were not yet ready. So even though like we could connect through stories, through legends, and the Grail was always leading us back, this is the moment where Eden, like we have to give ourselves like massive credit here. All of us who have done the self-work, all of us who have gone in and like, started to really come into a place of deep unconditional love. We are the ones that have made it possible for the return of Eden. Eden has been waiting for us.
Oh my goodness. That is so magical, all that you share. And there's and just the synchronicities of us creating these events separately, and of course in some dimension together, I imagine.
Yes, I'm sure.
Probably at the round table, the divine round table. And there's two questions. One is in relation to Eden, and then another in relation to the transience of time. But the first one, it keeps going through my mind, is so you beautifully explained aspects of where the Grail is and its purpose in guiding us home to Eden. And my question is, where did the Grail originally come from? Because you speak of its eternal and its source, and
I mean, I wish that I had answered that question myself. I think that's the thing. So that is the ultimate mystery.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate mystery. I don't think anyone truly knows, but I can say, so I believe that there is this legendary Grail. But it's interesting because just the way that myth works, there are certain divine objects that get grouped together. And so I can say from the Celtic lens, one of the earlier legends, kind of predating the Arthurian tales, is actually the Welsh stories of the Mabinogi. And so the Mabinogi, there is a story, the story of Bran and Branwen. And so this is a very intense story, but in the story, there is a character, Bran. And again, this is not what I want to make a note that these stories are probably around like 500 AD, maybe 300, 200 AD. So when I say the Grail is from like eons ago, like I probably mean, I think it's from like the time of like Lemuria. I think it's like really, really ancient. So when I'm talking about like the Mabinogi, we're still in the last 2000 years. So I just want to make a note of that. But I do want to say that in the Mabinogi, there is this great King Bran, and he actually receives a special cauldron from Ireland that you can put these different bodies into the cauldron, the bodies of great heroes, and they will be reborn. They will be reborn. And so there's a series of tragedies that happen in this story, and a series of tragedies. And what ends up happening is Bran's sister Branwen gets married to an Irish king, and he goes back to Ireland with her, with him, and he ends up mistreating her very badly. So then all hell breaks loose, and Bran is like, I will go rescue my sister. And so he goes from Wales, to Ireland. And it's really interesting because he is described almost as a giant in the myths and the legends. And so if you've ever heard the phrase, be a bridge, this actually comes from the Mabinogi, because when the Irish see that like Bran is coming, and he comes like with ships of men, he's like, that's it. My sister has been dishonored. I will go rescue her. And so the Irish, like there's like a bridge that they actually bring the bridge down so that Bran can't get across. And so they don't know what to do. The Welsh are like, oh my God, should we go back home? And Bran, who is this giant, says, I will be the bridge. And he like puts his body over the water, and everyone goes over him. And so there ends up being this kind of great battle. And at one point the cauldron comes out, and like everyone is like, all these dead bodies are getting thrown in the cauldron because like they're trying to reanimate them. This is like the zombie apocalypse moment of the ancient Welsh legends. That's what's happening. And so this is the sacred cauldron. And so in this moment, Bran, the great king, also receives, they're victorious. Like they do win the day, but Bran himself receives a mortal wound in the leg, just like the Fisher King. So this story is actually seen in some ways as the precursor to the story with the Fisher King from a mythological perspective. And so Bran, in the moment, because the second that he gets, I'm like, I realize that people can't see my leg. I'm trying to be like, he has this wound in his leg. And in that moment, he literally, like, he's between worlds. Like, so he knows in that moment that he's about to die. And so he gives prophecy. And he tells there are 7 men that are still alive. And he says, you need to, like, basically, when I die, cut off my head, super intense here, and bring it, to the Tower of London and bury it there. And it will forever protect the land of England. So that's like, so there's like this, it's called the magical head of Bran the Blessed. And he also tells them that basically they're going to go on like a quest just to get back, to England, just to get back the Tower of London. And he says that at one point they will be 80 years like in a fairyland. And, there'll be 80 years in one fairyland, and they will hear these beautiful singing birds, and they will forget all of their earthly troubles, all of their cares, all the pain and suffering of the battle. But at some point, they're going to have to leave and finish the quest and bring the magical head to the Tower of London. And so everything that, Bran prophesies comes true. They are actually like a couple different fairy realms they go to, but the last one, they are there for 70 or 80 years, just as he told. And it's interesting because even in this magical place, Bran, the magical head, is still talking and giving them wisdom and inspiration and guidance. And they do what they're told, and they bury the head in the Tower of London. And so this is actually thought of as one of the one of the most important things that is done in the history, which is supposed to create powerful protection for England, for that landmass, until something kind of bad happens. And so however many years later, probably around 50 to 100 years later, Arthur himself digs up the head. And he does this. And this is what many people say also creates the wasteland. He does this because he says, I don't want anyone to protect this great land but myself. Mm-hmm. So there's a moment of like, it's coming from like what you would think of as like a good place, but at the same time, there is a little bit of hubris there. And so he doesn't. So this is like I think they call it one of the 3 unfortunate disclosures. And so it is because he does this that many people believe that like he falls at the Battle of Camlin. So it's all intertwined, it's all connected. But I do want to, I know that you asked me a question and I totally derailed. So I want to say that this cauldron, this magical cauldron, there's also a great legend that Arthur himself has to go into the other world to retrieve this cauldron after it has been lost, because it's been lost like after this great battle. And so Arthur goes on, this is what many people think of as the first Grail quest, even though it's not a quest for the Grail, it's a quest for this cauldron, but it really is this vehicle of it's immortality. It's immortality. And so there are 9 maidens, not kidding. There are 9 maidens who guard this cauldron. Some people also see this as connected to Caradwyn's cauldron. I really see this a little bit differently, because I really do see this is to me the cauldron of immortality, and Caradwyn's cauldron is of inspiration. But nevertheless, there's some like sacred stuff brewing in this cauldron. And so Arthur, this is one of the most famous Arthurian tales. He goes like, into the other world, to retrieve this cauldron. And this is what many people consider the first Grail quest, because he is in pursuit of a sacred, holy object. And he has to go in pursuit of this because, like I said, he disinterred the head that was supposed to protect the land. So you're really seeing through these stories the history of a king that really tried to do what he thought was best for the people to bring harmony and balance, but in some cases brought ruin upon himself and brought ruin upon others.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Oh, my voice is going now. It's like the rebirthing cauldron, the resurrection cauldron.
Yes.
And that we may not have always made the best decisions in our lives. And even King Arthur is not immune to that.
Yes, no, absolutely. No, absolutely. And I mean, that's the whole thing is I know that there was, another summit that I was on with you in October. And for me, I really see Arthur. I feel like in his true divine form, he is a force for good. That's the whole thing is that, I think especially when you're navigating like the realms of fairy and all these kind of mythical things, I really feel like what is the way back home to Eden? What is the way back home to your essential divinity? And sometimes the right road leads you down what appears to be the wrong path. That's what I think is important, because I don't think that we'd want Arthur to be this like godly king who never makes a mistake. I really do feel what is coming through actually, which I think is important, maybe a bit of a tangent, but I really do feel that like, especially in this new age of Aquarius that we are emerging into, it's not supposed to be just one divine king or one divine queen, but all of us together. And so one of my favorite stories, and actually the story, it's like a biblical story of like Joseph. I'm sure many of you've heard this story of Joseph, the great dreamer. And there is, he's given, a very powerful gift at birth that, he can interpret dreams. And for those of you who have not heard the story, I'll just do like the very quick version. And so Joseph is born into a family like in Israel that like loves him, cherishes him, and he is so gifted. He is gifted beyond all of his brothers, and his brothers grow very, very envious of him to the point that one day they trick Joseph and they bring him into the desert and they sell him into slavery. And this is like terrible, hard, like again, so I'm actually going back to the thing with the Grail maidens when I said like the ultimate sin. The ultimate sin is, in my opinion, is to do something against your fellow man. Like that's the whole thing, is to stop acting from that nobility of purpose, which really I connect with Arthur in his purest essence and the Grail. But anyway, I digress. So in the story, Joseph is sold into slavery, and he ends up, working for, it's actually like a noble Egyptian who really cares about him. And the noble Egyptian's wife kind of has her eye on him. So even though Joseph does all of the things with such love and integrity, and, even though he's like, I don't want to be sold into slavery, but you know what? Like, I'm going to make like lemonade from lemons. I'm going to make the best of this. This woman, Egyptian nobleman's wife ends up like making like sexual advances at him. And he rebuffs her, but then the husband walks in and the entire situation is misunderstood. And so Joseph is then forced into prison. And he's forced into prison for, I'm not kidding, for 7 years. 7 years. And when he's down there, the day that he gets there, there are two people also in the cell with him. And one of them is talking about this crazy dream that he's had, and, he doesn't think that, he knows what it means, but Joseph, still blessed, still gifted, has the ability to interpret the man's dream. And, the man, and it's correct. He's totally correct. And the man is actually freed from prison the next day, but says, I will remember this. I will remember you. And at the end of those 7 years, someone comes to Joseph's door. And Pharaoh has been having these terrible dreams that he cannot understand. He cannot place them. And the dream, there are these dreams that he doesn't realize there's great famine. There's this terrible famine, and the people are starving. And he doesn't know what to do. What is the meaning of all this? And I think there are more, complex, kind of symbolism in the dream that I'm just not recalling off the top of my head. But Joseph talks to Pharaoh and immediately can tell him what the dream means. And he says that there are going to be 7 years of great prosperity in the land of Egypt, followed by 7 years of famine and drought. And so he says, in these 7 years of prosperity, you will have the ability to create enough harvest, to create enough bounty and abundance that you will be able to last the 7 years of drought, the 7 years of fallow fields. And so in this moment, the Pharaoh, who, again, that's kind of why I wanted to tell the story, because the Pharaoh is supposed to be the one that is the direct lineup with divinity, this, the embodiment of God in form. And yet he needs someone else, a helper, to actually be the one who lights the way for him, who gives him the wisdom. And so, no, Joseph's dream, comes true, and everything makes sense then for him. It all makes sense. The reason that his brother sold him into slavery, the reason that he had to be in that jail cell was for that moment, so he could save the entire civilization of Egypt. And so I share that because it also kind of connects what we were talking about with the wasteland, the barren land, and then the abundance, the fertility. And that's the whole thing, is God is giving us these messages because this is, this place, is sacred to the divine. It is sacred to us, but it's sacred to God too. And it's really I feel that, as we come into sacred remembrance of these stories and of these legends, we can honor this principle of life and fertility. We can recognize that part of our time here, part of the mission of Arthur, the Grail Kings, it really is to restore, beauty, bounty to the land. And, that really is us having our heaven on earth. That is Eden here today. But we need all of us to do it together. And that's why I told the story with Joseph, because why didn't Pharaoh just know what the dream meant? Why didn't Pharaoh just have the divine understanding that it was 7 years of famine and 7 years of plenty? But no, he needed someone else. And that's really what's happening here, is all of us, we need each other. And that's why we have the Knights of the Round Table. That's why it's not just Arthur by himself, because he needs the knights. And I'm really also presencing the last summit, I was at with Eimear, the witches reclaiming the Round Table. Arthur doesn't just need the knights anymore. He needs the witches.
I know, that's in my head. I'm like, and the witches, and the witches.
I know, he needs witches. He needs, and that really is, part of what is really happening on the planet right now, is this. That's why these stories are coming back.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And you mentioned earlier, when you were speaking of the Grail Castle and how time was bent, but time took on a whole new meaning. And I know you've walked the lands of Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. And I'm wondering if you want, because you mentioned them earlier as well, in relation to the chalice, the Grail cup.
Yes.
Would you like to share your experience of visiting these holy lands?
Oh my God, yes. It was so interesting because I was there. I was in Israel. I think it was 2016. And, I also really want to, bring, Christ into these stories, because Christ and Arthur, many people actually see them as like, they have like very parallel tales. And some people believe that like on the inner planes, they are just like almost like twin brothers. Like it's like literally it's because they have very similar coding. And, when I was, like, I said it was like 2016, I was there. There's a part of the holy city of Jerusalem. It's ancient. There's an ancient part of Jerusalem that has been undisturbed. And you can actually walk in Christ's footsteps. Like you can go visit the Garden of Gethsemane. I actually went to the garden at sunrise. We weren't supposed to go. And it's funny because actually oh my God, I knew where the Garden of Gethsemane was. That's where, Christ waited right before, the crucifixion. But actually right now, I totally forgot. It actually is kind of a wasteland. I'm not kidding. I knew where it was because it was like right outside of the bounds of the city. But actually it's a place right now. It's kind of dangerous. I probably shouldn't say that I was there. But it was like, I think it's a place where there's like a lot of homeless people, go now because it's just, and there was a lot of like kind of litter, and, pollution there. But I knew, I was actually led by a guide, like this was the original place. This was the Garden of Gethsemane. And it's there because even walking through what appeared like a wasteland, there was the presence of Christ, undeniable with every footstep I took. And, and so then I also did this thing. You can do a special walk where you can walk and, you can go to the prison where Christ was interred, and you can actually walk through the streets of Old Jerusalem to the place of the crucifixion itself. And, there's even a place where you can stand where Mother Mary stood and she watched, she watched her son. And it's crazy because in that space, even though there's that great sadness, there's also great holiness, because anywhere this holy family walked was blessed. And that's the whole thing. So we can think of the story and in that very kind of 3D sense with the way that it like panned out. The thing though is that this holy family came here for us, for this legacy. And so that's part of, there are stories actually that, the wood of the cross was actually from, the tree of knowledge from the Garden of Eden. Don't know, of course, like if that's true, but like in a mythical sense, on an inner plane sense, of course it could be. It's like one of those things where the wood of the tree of the Garden of Eden is not wood that you can see with your mortal eyes, and so it's like, I feel like even in that moment, like he was like, that was the moment, basically of, I feel like, Christ, even though it's seen as a sad moment and like, I don't really buy into the whole thing, like he died for our sins, but I see it as that moment where like, finally, it's like the separation was broken. It's like, I think that there was such an outpouring of love from him, even in the face of death. And really that is part of the message for us, is that so many people, especially I think a lot of people at this summit, witches who have gone through like, very painful lifetimes, where they were definitely afraid for their lives or they faced death. It's like, even in the face of death, to hold on to that absolute unconditional love and to not let anything take you from it. I really feel like that is part of Christ's legacy. That is part of his, and that Mother Mary too. So when I said like, you could, stand, where she stood watching, that's why I said, it's not just the sadness. It's that even then in those moments, the unconditional love, it couldn't be lost. Not just that it couldn't be lost. It was the most powerful thing in the universe because it is the seed of all creation. And so there in that moment, it didn't matter what was happening in 3D. And so I know that I'm sure Mary Magdalene was there too. And that's, I want to presence her on this summit, because literally it was the love of all three of them and their devotees, the people who love them. That was the legacy of love that has led us here today.
Wow, that's so powerful. So powerful. And what was it like for you walking in their footsteps?
Oh my God.
I'm like, I want to go there. I have to go there.
Oh my God. It's beautiful. I mean, I can say, it's really funny because when I feel like if you are more energetically sensitive, you can really feel his presence, because I felt him the most at Nazareth. And I only kind of went there. It was like the universe took me there it was like by accident. I was like, oh, I guess I'm going to Nazareth. Oh, okay. And I guess I should, now that I'm here and I wasn't planning on being here, I should go into this. It's like the workshop where him and Joseph like played when he was a small boy. And you literally just go there. And I was there for 5 hours. It felt like 10 minutes. It was like one of those things that it's like one of those things, I'm trying to describe it, especially I think a lot of times, like the work that, me and Eimear, I know we work with a lot of different, goddesses, witches. And it almost is like when spirituality is such an essential part of your life, as I'm sure everyone who's listening, I'm sure that you are all very, very spiritual. It's almost like sometimes like that spirituality just becomes every day. It becomes more of your ordinary way of relating with the world. And then when you go to some of these places, you are brought back into true awe. The awe of actually like, oh my God, like that's what I think of when I think of the word holy. And I really want to think about that with the Holy Grail, because holy on the one hand means like sacred. It is sacred, but I think that there's something about the word holy that to me brings me back into the essential place of awe. And that actually is what the Kabbalists believe is actually the truest, the truest experience of being alive is that experience of wonder and awe that all of this exists, that all of this is. And so when you are going through Netflix and you're like, oh, this is boring. It's like you've lost, like at that moment, you're not in touch with the awe, the bliss, the ecstasy of us being here now in this human experience. And so some of these holy places, they bring you back into that place of essential awe. And that is also the purpose of the Grail and these sacred objects. Because think about it, when we listen to like the story of like Arthur pulling the sword from a stone, or like the Lady of the Lake revealing Excalibur, there's a sense of awe. And that's why we tell stories and listen to stories. It's because it inspires that in us. And so that experience of awe really is the essence of being alive. It is the essence of recognizing the miracle of all that we are experiencing here in these human bodies, in this human form.
That's amazing. So magical. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I know you want to lead us on a journey. Is there anything else you want to share before we go into
I did
meditation?
take a sip of water.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I realized my cup is red. It's very, very, very Mary Magdalene of me.
Yes, your chalice.
I know, it's perfect. I always had a hard time with Mary Magdalene, like connecting with her. And I mean, it's funny because she's someone who I know, like, if people have worked with her, like people either love her, they feel this immediate, like deep, deep reverence and devotion, or they're like, oh no, stay away. And so it's like it's always one or the other. And so for me, I was in the stay away. Stay away camp. And but it was so interesting. So I was in Avalon this previous summer, and it was so funny because I was with a group of women, and there were certain items I had to get. Like I had to get like a robe, kind of like a sacred robe. I had to get like a scarf, and I had to get a journal. Those were the three things I had to bring with me. And so lo and behold, so the journal that like I'm guided to get is like this one that it is like the most royal red. It is like wine colored red, and like it is like embossed in gold. And I was like, why am I buying this? I was like, nope, that's the one you're getting. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm getting this. I don't know why my guides want me to have this. And so the scarf I picked out is this. I'm getting my cup back again. It's like this red, it's like this bright red color. And I'm like, and I'm someone who like red isn't usually my color. I don't usually do red. And I'm a Leo. You think I would. But no, and then I got this, and the robe that I got, the sacred robe that I got was this very scarlet, this like satin scarlet robe. And I was just like, I do not understand. What have I bought? Like, why did I do this? And then I was in Avalon with this group of women, and I realized that like in this circle, I was the only one who had that color. It was so interesting. It was like, wow. It's almost like I had agreed that like, so on a soul level, even though Mary Magdalene and I were still like, hello, who are you? Like, it was like, even though that was kind of going on in the background, it's like that I had answered the call. that I would hold that frequency, of the Magdalene in that space. And maybe it was because I had been to the Holy Land, because I had been to Israel and, walked in that sacred place and walked in those footsteps. I think that probably was part of it, actually. No, I'm sorry. I'm almost like, as I'm talking, I'm kind of getting confirmation, because I was like, shouldn't someone else, like, who feels that deep love of the Magdalene, like, be the one? But it was like one of those things that what I was also kind of receiving is part of why that I was called to have those colors and to wear that, is because I'm someone who's always had kind of a penchant for deep devotion. And whether that has been like deep devotion for my creative writing, for my projects, my summits, even in my relationships, I would have friendships where it was like, I would have like, my best friend was my whole world. And there was like a devotion that, which is very, very innate, very natural for me. And I realized that, like, for me, the way that I was connecting, this is the way I've always connected in my life, is through this kind of energy of the beloved. And I've always done that. I've had that with pets, where they are my great beloved. And as I started to kind of deepen in my understanding of the Magdalene, I realized that that was the thing that we had in common, that she was a woman, because I always saw her as like kind of, someone who would help people heal their sexuality, and she was very passionate, but I never, connected with her on that level as the embodiment of the energy of the beloved. And really, that's what she was, like, beloved of Christ, and so I wanted to say that part of the work that I've done really with Eden is really opening into this consciousness of the beloved. And the Sufi poets, take this further, where it's not just the beloved as, a friend, or like, a romantic relationship, but the divine as the ultimate beloved. And so this is a concept that when I was younger, I was always resistant. I was like, why can't I just have that in human form? And the more that I started to engage with like the energy of Eden, the more that I saw that actually that was the way home. It was through having this kind of divine, sacred, beloved relationship, like, with the source of all of creation. That really was what was going to bring me home to Eden and really, create this grail in my heart. And so I'm inviting this, because this is a summit that really is bringing through Mary Magdalene. I really want to invite you to see her in this different way, as someone who opens you into the consciousness of being the beloved, being God's beloved, and see how that transforms your reality, see how that transforms your life.
That's so beautiful. So beautiful. And I really resonate with that energy of the beloved, of a deep love that emanates from her, from the Magdalenes. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to share that. I was like, now we have, I promised that I would lead you through an activation. Usually what I do in these activations is I like to create a sacred circle, and then I'm going to call in all different assistants for us. So everyone, I just invite you to like really take a deep breath, really come into your body. And I cast this circle around me and all the beautiful attendees and participants of the Golden Grail, the rise of the Magdalene witches, casting this circle around us to create a space beyond space and time beyond time. I cast this circle to block out all energies and spirits that are not allies of ours. I cast this circle that all energies raised herein remain confined. As above, so below, as within, so without, the circle is sealed. Into the sacred space I call the Holy Grail. Please be our guide, our overlighting presence. Guide us on our sacred journey today. I call in the elements: earth, air, water, fire, metal, ether, and starlight. I call upon the great directions: north, east, south, west, above, below, and within. And into the sacred space, I call the overlighting presence of King Arthur. I call in Morgane Le Fay, Guinevere, Merlin. I call in the energy, the great presence of Mary Magdalene and Yeshua the Christ. Be with us here in the sacred space today. And now, I invite you to really close your eyes and see yourself transported through time and space. All of a sudden, you are walking down a mysterious path in the woods. The path seems misty before you. It's really gravelly. All of a sudden, there in the distance, you see what appears to be a mirage, a golden grail glimmering in the distance. All around you in these woods, you see it's a barren wasteland, dark, dreary, and mysterious. But there before you is this great golden grail, shimmering, so beautiful. You don't know what to do, but you keep walking forward in the direction of this mysterious golden grail that looks about maybe 100 or 200 feet away. It seems to call you forward, summoning you. All of a sudden, there's a burst of lightning in the heavens. You take in the jagged line of fire as it dances across the sky. And when you look back at the road ahead of you, the golden grail is gone. And in its place, you see an old, weathered castle. It looks quite gloomy, truth be told. But the wasteland around you is dark, and you'd rather not stay out here. In the castle ahead, you see a window with the candle lit, and you hope that maybe you'll be welcomed inside, but there must be people within. Just as you're deciding what to do next, all of a sudden it starts to pour and rain, and the rain pours down at you. The lightning in the sky grows brighter, and you hear the pearl of thunder in the air. You hurry as quickly as you can. You hasten in the direction of the castle, and you knock on the door. 1, 2, 3, knocking, desperate to get out of the rain. A small fairy being opens the door inch by inch, and the door creaks open. The small being greets you at the door. Get a good look at this mysterious being. What do they look like? Is there anything distinctive about them? They, without so much as a single word, they welcome you inside. Finally, when you're fresh and dry, the little creature asks, "Why have you come here?" "To get away from the rain," you say. "The rain outside and the wasteland. It's so dark and dreary out there." The small creature nods and leads you deeper into the castle, into a richly decorated hall. There are beautiful tapestries and a rich red carpet that runs the length of the room. This is an ancient room where kings would gather in times of old. And there before you, on a throne, you see a strange sight, a sorrowful man with a ruby-colored crown. You see a sorrowful man with a ruby in his crown, a king with a gaping wound in his leg. You look closely at the wound in the man's leg. The bleeding has stopped, yet the king does not heal. He appears old and sickly. As you walk toward him, you go over and introduce yourself. Give this strange king your name. Consciously connect with this being. Take a moment to really feel his presence. This is the great guardian of the Grail Castle. "Who are you?" you ask, wondering if the man will give you his name. "Me," the king says. "I am the Fisher King. This is my castle," he says, and waves his hand. And as he waves his hand, all of a sudden, you see a procession coming into the room. There are 3 different servants who enter the hall with huge, luxurious pillows raised high above their heads. Upon each of these glorious pillows, you see a sacred, holy object. On one, you see a lance, another a horn, and the last pillow carries the mysterious Grail. You watch the procession in silence. The Fisher King looks at you, inviting you to say something, and yet for some reason, fear seizes you, and you remain silent unsure of what to say. The Fisher King turns to you with wisdom in his voice and says, I have seen many knights come this way on great quests. Are you one such knight? Answer now if you feel that you are a knight, or perhaps you answer that you are something else, maybe a witch or an enchantress. The Fisher King continues, grateful that you have introduced yourself. He says, most knights that come this way are searching for something very special, a certain cup, what many call the Holy Grail. Have you seen any such thing? The king asks, the twinkle in his eyes. It's at this moment that something stirs in you, something great, and you feel in your heart the desire to break the tradition that Percival has set. You don't want to be silent. You want to speak. It's at this moment that you hear something, a whistle in the wind, and a woman's voice comes into your ear, heard by you and you alone. Take hold of the grail, the voice says, and bring it to me. And all at once, you know, in a way that cannot be explained, that this is the voice of Morgan Le Fay, great priestess of the Isle of Avalon, she who tended Arthur after the Battle of Camlan. Take a breath, and all of a sudden she continues to speak. You hear her whisper in your ear. She says, take this Holy Grail to me at the Isle of Avalon, that it may heal the once and future king at last, that he may return in his full glory. You're stunned, and you realize that no one else in the room has heard Morgan Le Fay but you. Unsure what to do, you turn to the king. You wonder, is it okay to just take the grail? Should you ask? What should you do? Suddenly you say, the only thing that comes to mind, it's a question. You turn to the Fisher King and say, what is the meaning of all this procession here? And the second you ask this, there's a bright light outside and everything changes color. The grass is suddenly bright green again. Everything is healed, restored. You hear birds sing in the land. And all of a sudden, right before you, the king's leg heals before your very eyes. You watch as all of that red that was the wound suddenly becomes perfectly healed skin. You gasp, and the Fisher King hands you the grail, the sacred grail. And now you know what you must do, what Morgan Le Fay told you. Take the grail, this fairy grail, take it with you to the water, and there you hope you will find the way to the mystical Isle of Avalon. You leave the Grail Castle, holding the grail in your hands. It's soft and light. And in it, as you hold this grail, you feel every cell in your being expand with light, with joy, with happiness. You make your way to the lake, and there in the mist, you see a mysterious figure. You expect to come upon the Lady of the Lake, who once gave Arthur the sword Excalibur. But there instead, at water's edge, is someone you do not expect, the one and only Mary Magdalene, beloved of Yeshua the Christ. She is standing there at water's edge in all her glory, cloaked in radiant red. And she rests upon the water, her feet not sinking below the waves, but standing upon it. In her presence, you feel as if you have entered into a mighty cathedral and you've stared at the most beautiful stained glass that you have ever seen. Her presence is intoxicating, and you feel her passionate, wild heart as she smiles at you. And now in this moment, I invite you to listen to see if Mary Magdalene has a message for you. something that she wishes to say. And now you go to hand her the Grail, for you are sure that this holy, sacred, divine being, she must be the one that you are supposed to give it to. But Mary Magdalene shakes her head. She smiles and tells you to hold on to it for now, for it is her job to take you to the Isle of Avalon to meet Morgan Le Fay. She bids you to come with her, to walk on water with her. For a moment, you're afraid. She tells you it'll be fine. Trust her. Trust yourself. She reaches out and takes you by the hand, and step by step, you walk on water with her. Feel yourself walking on the surface of the water as if it were a glass prism. You look down at the beautiful ripples below. You see the sea creatures below the depths. But here, the beautiful water, it's almost as if you're walking on ice. And yet, this is beautiful, warm water. And you stand on the surface beside the great, powerful presence of the Magdalene. You marvel at this miracle with the Holy Grail in one hand and Mary Magdalene at your side. You keep walking toward a horizon that is bright and beautiful. But as you get closer and closer to the sun at the edge of the horizon, it's almost like the horizon suddenly turns into something unexpected, where before there was sun, all of a sudden you see the outline of a mystical isle, a place that was not there before. Before this isle, you see great mists that seem to block the entrance. Mary Magdalene bids you to raise the Grail high into the sky, and as you do, the mists part, and there before you, the Isle of Avalon comes into your line of sight in all its splendor, its glory, and magnificence. And on the shores of the island, you see the outline of Morgan Le Fay, who called you here. Take a good look at this great, mysterious figure, mistress of magic, Morgan Le Fay, the great healer. And there at her side is the great and glorious King Arthur. Without words, without a single thought, just purely awed to be in the presence of this king, you raise the Holy Grail and bring it to him. You make eye contact with this great king and hand him the Grail to drink from. Arthur brings the Grail to his lips, and all of a sudden you see color return to his face. You see light return to his eyes. And a second later, you see the king is restored. Arthur, the king, full of vigor and stamina, he returns. This once and future king, king of the land, at last restored to who he once was. He drinks from the Holy Grail to the very last drop. But then, when he returns it to you, you see the cup is once again full. For this is a Grail that can never be empty. And he leads the way and says to follow him. He says, follow me now to a holy place, a place that is beyond your wildest dreams. Where else could you go, you think? You've just gone to the Grail Castle and the great Isle of Avalon. What could surpass these two marvels, these two beautiful places? You follow Arthur, though, feeling in your gut, in your soul, that you are meant to, that you are destined to follow him. And as you walk, Morgan Le Fay and Mary Magdalene trail behind you. All of you walk on the water beyond the Isle of Avalon. And as you continue, the trees around you, the water, grows ever more lush and beautiful. Every surface seems to glisten. The beauty becomes such that it brings tears to your eyes. You travel closer and closer to this great, glorious, beautiful horizon. And all of a sudden, everything is green. Life is teeming. It's just gorgeous beyond words. You have entered into what can only be considered paradise. Where are you? Where are we? You ask. Eden. A voice answers on the wind. Not the voice of your companions, but a voice you have not heard before. And yet it is one you recognize, a voice that can only belong to one being, Yeshua, Christ, Yeshua, Son of God. When you hear this voice, a golden door appears before you. This is the door. This is the doorway to Eden, to paradise. And all of a sudden, you just see the outline of the door. And in the center of the door, you can look through it and see the great garden beyond. Arthur leads the way forward, and you take your place in the garden at last. I invite you to take a moment and just see how this garden, this beautiful Garden of Eden, appears to you. For it appears different for every person. Take a moment to really be here in this place. Breathe it in, feel it in your being. All of a sudden, Arthur leads you to a small and beautiful well. He instructs you to fill the Holy Grail with the water from this sacred well. Arthur tells you this well in the garden is a well of abundance, immortality, fertility, love, and all the beauty of creation. This well, just one drop, contains all the codes of Eden. You must fill this cup with the codes of Eden, he says, with this water, and bring it back with you into the world in this sacred Grail cup, that the world may remember what it believes it has lost. As I was asleep, so are they. As I have been restored, so shall they be. And in this moment, Arthur invites you to take the Grail with the sacred water from this pool that contains the codes, all of the energy of Eden. He invites you to take this Grail cup to your lips and to drink, trusting him, feeling the holiness, the beauty of this place. You drink this magical water from the Garden of Eden. You drink it out of this great and beautiful golden Grail. And you feel the liquid now, starting at your lips as it goes down your throat, pouring into every cell of your body. You are now being here in this moment, recoded, recalibrated, transformed by the energy of Eden. Feel that now coming into your very being. As Mary Magdalene takes your hand to ground you. Hold on to me, she says. And Morgan Le Fay, Lady of Magic, takes your other hand. You are held now in this space. One hand held by a woman who is the embodiment of divine love. The other hand held by a woman who is the embodiment of divine magic. In the presence of a king and the overlighting presence of the Son of God. Take a moment to just really be here in this moment, in this place of sacred initiation, in the Garden of Eden with the Holy Grail. In this space, all is perfect, all is one. You have returned to the garden at last. And now, what you have learned, what you have experienced here today, you may take back with you into the world where you can spend every day of the rest of your life sharing the magic of the Grail simply by being yourself, simply by being who you are. And one by one, all of you walk back out of the door, out of the doorway to paradise, all of you linking arms and linking hands. In this moment, all of you stand together in a circle. You are one. You, Arthur, Mary Magdalene, Morgan Le Fay. You are united. Divine kingship, divine magic, divine love, and the overlighting presence, Son of God. And here you hold the Grail, which holds the secrets of life itself, the secrets of creation, the secrets of divinity. In this moment, all of you are one. All of you are one. And any part of you that is not yet healed, that needs healing, here in this moment, offer it up to this sacred circle. And let the circle also bring you into this new version of you, this version of you that is newly encoded with the energy of Eden. Go forth now and bring this with you into the world. Be this new person, for you are forever changed. But remember always that Eden is your birthright and the Grail is the way. I invite you now to take a few more moments to hold hands with these great teachers and see if there is anything that any of them wish to say to you, any parting words of wisdom that they have to share. And now I invite you to take one last look at this place. Maybe in the distance you see the Grail Castle. Maybe you look back into the beautiful doorway leading into Eden. Maybe you see the Isle of Avalon. See each of these places in turn. Take a moment to really bless all of them. Express your gratitude and thanks for these sacred places, for these sacred guides, and this sacred object, the Holy Grail. In this moment, you hand the Grail at last to Morgan Le Fay. You hand it to her for safekeeping. You know that one day you will find it again. Maybe we'll end up back again in the Grail Castle for another night to discover. But for now, it is time for you to go, to leave this place behind and take the magic that you have received here today back into the world with you. I invite you to take just a couple more deep breaths now. Look at the water glistening below your feet. And now feel yourself transported through time and space. Come back into the now moment, into the present, into the room where you began the sacred journey. And feel your feet against the floor. Maybe rub your hands together and take another deep breath. And when you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes.
That was so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. It felt like running a marathon. I was like, we're going to do this. I was like instructed. I was like, you must have all these beings. They must all be present and it's all part of the initiation. And because I really, that's why I opened today, like with the wasteland, because I woke up and my instruction was like, bring them to Eden, bring them from the wasteland to the garden. And the Holy Grail is the way.
Wow.
So that really was,
beautiful.
that was my intention. So I'm just so grateful to you, Eimear, for putting this amazing summit together that everyone here can be activated, activated by the Grail and also at last return home and receive the Eden codes.
Thank you so much. I feel like I went into a deep trance there. And yeah, that the water, the deep nourishment and the energy, it just felt so powerful. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Oh my God, let me just see. It was like, I think I've said about everything. I do feel one thing I wanted to say is, I felt part of the reason that I was guided to create this meditation, the way it was created. You had like different figures. You had like Yeshua, you had Mary Magdalene, you had King Arthur, Morgan Le Fay. And often like these seem like, very different traditions. but really at the heart, I just want to say the powerful connection between these two. And also, I remember what I was going to say. So there are other legends. So I mentioned that the Fisher King has that gaping wound in his leg, and that is from a lance. And so that was one of the holy objects that you saw at the procession. And so that is the lance that apparently struck, according to legends, struck Christ down when he was walking. So you're seeing that even in the legends, there is a connection between Christ, and the Grail Castle, the Grail King. And so it's real, so that's really interesting. And there are also stories that, the Grail itself, basically Joseph or Matthias, the uncle, the uncle of Christ, used it to catch his blood, while he was being crucified. And actually that they brought, they brought that, back with them, to Avalon, after the crucifixion. So it's interesting. So there is so much mystery surrounding the Holy Grail. And I think the thing is that there might have been different items throughout history that, that we call the Holy Grail. But I really do feel the Holy Grail has an energetic signature. And it's the same way that so that Grail that Joseph of Arimathea took, that once held the blood of Christ, that is the Holy Grail. That is the Holy Grail. And yet there are other Grails throughout history, because the Grail is more than just a 3D object. It is real in the truest sense of the word. And I'm going to bring this up. I actually just brought this up on my own summit, but there are two things I want to say. There is this beautiful painting that everyone I'm sure has seen of, Adam and God in the Sistine Chapel. And this beautiful painting, you'll see these two fingers of God and Adam, and neither of them is touching. And, when I first saw that, I thought it was because it was almost like a live action shot that God was reaching out and he was about to touch Adam, but hadn't gotten there yet. But actually, the reason the two fingers aren't touching, that space, that invisible space between the fingers, is indicative of all that God gave man that cannot be seen with mortal eyes. And so that's what I want to say, is that really, the Grail, it's, even when it takes physical form, it's in two places at once. That's almost like I'm making this weird mantra, this weird mudra, with my hands. So it's that I was just guided to do that. So it's yes, this is the physical Grail and this is the etheric Grail. And when we hold the physical object in our hands, it's holding that. And, I remember I had a really intense initiation of the soul around the time I was teaching Arthurian myth and magic. And I was just oh my God, I felt like I was in the face of something impossible. And I was in meditation. All of a sudden, my guides revealed the sword Excalibur to me. And it was this moment where it wasn't I've done meditations with people where I've guided them, to take the sword. But this was a moment where it was given and it was undeniable. And I was just oh my God. And it reminded me that, it meant so many things to me in that moment. But the point was that even though I was not handed a physical sword, I knew that I had been handed Excalibur nonetheless. And, so I really feel that's what I'm trying to say here with the Grail, is that, it has existed in different legends, different tales, and in different times and spaces in our human experience. But the Grail, the Grail is eternal. It whispers to us across time and space. It is really this vessel of first creation. When we drink of the Grail, when we connect with the Grail, we remember that which we truly are.
That is so beautiful. So beautiful. And would you like to share about your free gift?
Oh, okay. So the free gift. So I did a beautiful meditation with Eimear on her last summit that also included the Holy Grail. And everyone loved it. I got people where's this meditation? And I was you have to get Eimear summit, and so this is a beautiful, meditation. I know there's Arthur, Merlin, and again, there is a beautiful experience that you get to have with the Grail. It's really high frequency. And so something that I like to talk about, which I didn't really get a chance to talk about very much in this summit, is that when you work with the Grail, it's, there's a consciousness initiation, but you also can do real magic with the Grail. The Grail is actually a vessel of great magic that we can use in ritual to create, beautiful outcomes in our reality. So anyway, so I feel like that meditation is a little bit of Grail magic. And I think Eimear and I were talking before this event, we're also going to take out this meditation that I just, guided you through. So you're going to get both. So I hope that you enjoy both of these sacred activations so that you can just continue to bask in the energies of Eden, bask in the energies of the Holy Grail.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I feel after all of this, I must go and drink from my Grail cup.
Yes. It's a never-ending cup. It never gets empty.
It never gets empty. And to let all of this integrate and for the messages and the coding to continue to land. It's really beautiful. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for all that you've shared, for all that you are, for being the torch and for passing the torch to me from our sister summits, event to event. And for all you bring through, and for everyone watching, there'll be links on Elizabeth's speaker page to access these beautiful free gifts and how to connect with you as well. So thank you so, so much for being here, for all that you are. Thank you. And to everyone watching, we will see you again soon. Bye for now.